What's up, guys? Welcome back to the PL Pod right here on YouTube. I am Daniel and we are back with another podcast. I think I've just got two intros mixed up there, but we will move with it anyway. I'm ill. If you can't tell, well, I've already told you a lot. There was a video that came out on Wednesday and the video that came out on Friday. I was in both of them. I'm still ill. Nothing's changed. It's grim, but we're here to record a nice long podcast about another very grim topic. Is that? Yeah, that is fair. We've got a regular guest now. I think it's fair to call you a third appearance. 17.6 thousand followers on Instagram, and it's the Spurs News. How are you doing, mate?
Hi, mate. Yeah, all good. Thank you for having me back on for my hat-trick ball.
No worries. I mean, you've got a striker that knows all about them, so I had to come through and get you on for the hat-trick. Not just because of a striker you've got, because of a certain manager you've got. And a certain manager you might have to get in, but we'll speak about that a little bit later. Before we do get onto that, I think we have to make a joint public statement. Emerson Royal. In the last podcast, we weren't very nice on him, saying that he was the worst Spurs player, you know, a load of things, to the point where somebody messaged me, a girl who I'd been talking to, and we stopped talking for ages. She messaged me. I'm going to find the message. She messaged me going, where is it? Nope, is that the one? I don't even know. Let me I'm going to find this. I probably should have read this, but I don't care. I'm going to find the message because it's flipping hilarious. Where is it? Come on, it's got to be here somewhere. Oh yeah, she sent me a picture of the thumbnail. Where we put Emerson in the bottom tier, and she went, chill, Spurs players aren't that bad, no need to violate them that much, on about needs his own tier, when he's put Leicester of all teams. The last bit wasn't needed, but at the time Emerson was not a very good footballer. He's managed to turn it around a little bit. Is there anything we need to say to the Brazilian fullback?
Of course, I mean, as you say, I was sort of repeated there. When we were speaking about him, he was poor. He probably was the worst player. But since then, Everton, I want to give you my heartfelt apology. You have been incredible. For whatever reason, since Porro signed, you've decided to play like prime Cafu. So fair play to you, mate, and I appreciate your hard work.
I love it, genuinely, because it's been such a turnaround. That podcast, we were slating him left, right, and centre. Yeah. Shots everywhere. You had 3 right backs at the club. We said he was the one that needed to go the most, and he's the only one that stayed.
Typical.
God, how things work out. But yes, he's somehow done really, really well for himself. So fair play, Emerson. I still think Spencer's a better footballer, and that's coming from a Leicester fan, but, you know, fair play. Let's move on to Antonio Conte. What's happened here, then? Because I'm stuck.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's come as a surprise and not at the same time. We all knew behind the scenes that things weren't going as planned. But for him to come out and say it on such a public stage as he did in his press conference after that Southampton game, it sort of, everyone was like, whoa, okay, we didn't really expect that. I think one of the journalists that normally does all the bits and pieces for Tottenham, he was speaking about how it was probably the maddest press conference he's ever been in with some of the stuff that he was coming out with. I just think that Conte started to almost sever his relationship now with the club. He's gone in to sort of protect his own ego and protect his own career for his future job. But I do agree with him with some of the things that he said.
So, right, let's start with the interview. I think that's probably the best place to start.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on it? Do you think he was correct in what he said? Do you think it was right for him to say it as the manager of Spurs? What's gone on with that interview? Because it's just mad.
Yeah, so I absolutely believe he's correct. Calling out some of the players, I don't think all of the players were needed to be called out like he said, but obviously you're not going to pick names out of a hat and start listing them off because that would be literal football suicide. But with calling out the board, yes, because us fans have been saying it for months. Although saying it on such a public stage like that, I'm not sure has helped him whatsoever in all the sort of speculation around his job and stuff like that. Obviously, you mentioned the board only winning one trophy in the last 20 years, or he said nothing, although we have won that Carabao Cup a couple of years ago. But yeah, I mean, just I don't think the public stage was the right place to say it. He did mention as well that he tried to sort of change it with words, and over the last couple of months, he's been dropping sort of riddles and hints in his previous press conferences. But with this one, he's just come out and said it all within about 10 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I remember it was some point last season, I think, when he came out and sort of said he was happy to be fired after a loss in the, was it in the Champions League or something? He just came out at one point last year and he just went, "Oh yeah, if you sack me, that is what it is." And Spurs fans went, "I'm sorry, what? We like you. What's going on here?" And he's a very explosive guy, I think it's fair to say. He's definitely
Yeah.
got that Italian blood within him where he's very reactionary, very angry, very, very angry. But I'm lost for words. I mean, do you think he was right? I know you've said that, he may have said things behind closed doors, and that's fair enough. First of all, do you think he maybe has tried to say things behind closed doors and Levy's just gone, "Don't care, shut up, we're getting Poch in the summer, screw off"? And then, if Levy has sort of gone like that, do you think the public forum was the only place to do it?
Since sort of January time, I think it's been well known that at the end of the season that we were going to part ways.
Mm-hmm.
Tottenham have the 12-month extension period to trigger in his contract, but I think everyone knows that's not going to happen. So he was going to leave at the end of the season no matter what. I don't know whether Conte felt like he'd been hard done by, possibly with the way he's been backed, and obviously we've signed a couple of players that he said are club signings and things like that, and maybe he's trying to get a bit of a revenge for that because he didn't play Spence, he doesn't play Danjuma either, so we sort of can see what's going on there. He's also mentioned in press conferences, but both of them are openly club signings, so he sort of put that out there. Maybe behind the doors, as I say, he's trying to change the mentality of the club. Really, he's saying we're too bothered about, but finishing in top four for us, Champions League is like winning a trophy, which I agree has been made to feel like top four is an achievement for us every season because obviously our board and owners only really care about the money side of things anyway. Whereas Conte has that mentality of he wants to win everything, and unfortunately that just is not a fit at Spurs. Spurs don't win trophies, to be honest. We just don't do it, unfortunate as it is, and as close as we've been over the last couple of years, last 10 years even. But yeah, I mean, he was right with the things he said, but he shouldn't have been on the public stage.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And then well, we all know that this means he will most likely leave the club. I would rate it if he's come out and said all this and then goes on to sign a 2-year deal and goes, "No, I'm here to fix this stuff." But that's
Imagine.
obviously that's obviously not going to happen. So there's been a lot of talks about him leaving in this international break, or well, no, being sacked in this international break. He said he's not going to leave because he's got about 5 million on the line, hasn't he? Do you think he gets sacked now, or do you think he stays until the summer? And do you think that possibly also has something to do with who you could get in until the end of the season, or will it just be a case of Ryan Mason will get him gone, or wait till the summer? Will who you get next not really impact the decision?
Yeah. So as for him leaving, I am quite confident that he will leave in this international break, probably most likely within the next week as of when we're recording this on the Saturday. Um, I don't know because some sources have said that we tried to look at someone. I think that person was Tuchel, but obviously he's moved on to Bayern Munich now. Um, Ryan Mason, as much as I love him, and he is a good assistant coach, I'm not sure he's a head coach. He did win a couple of games a couple of seasons ago when Jose left, but I don't know whether I want him for the remainder of the 10 of the Premier League season. Um, as for him leaving or being sacked, a couple of people have said it might actually end up being a mutual agreement, just so it looks better on both sides of things. So Conte's reputation isn't tarnished because he's not being quote unquote sacked, and we can just sort of brandish it as a mutual agreement and sort of move on with things and brush it all under the carpet. Um, but as I say, I think he is most likely to be sacked sometime within the next week, 2 weeks maybe. I think it would be stupid to go to the Everton game and then sack him after that. I think we just need to get the new manager in if we get one before that Everton game, just so they have that long run to the end of the season.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, It's such a strange situation because you don't find managers go against, players and the board this easily. And if they do, they usually do go pretty quickly.
Mm.
I haven't got it down the plan, but I am sort of interested here. How do you predict the season playing out if you were to keep hold of him? Because surely he doesn't care and the players then don't care.
Yeah, as you say, it's such a weird one that where we're sitting in the league, where we're fourth at the moment, a couple of points behind United. We could have even gone third if we beat Southampton the other week. So you think a club that are in third place, which for Tottenham is quite good and above expectations because we're normally around that fourth or fifth, and we're talking about sacking our manager, which would seem absolutely crazy to any outsiders, really, and I sort of agree. If he did end up staying till the end of the season, as you say, the players know they're not playing for him, essentially. There's no reason why they should be putting in 100%, although they should be, because they should be playing
Yeah.
for the badge for the club, not for the man that's in charge. But I do have confidence that we may be able to pick Champions League solely on the fact that Chelsea and Liverpool are not playing too well this season. Newcastle have also started to drop off within the last couple of months as well. So if he does stay, probably fourth or fifth. I can't see us getting any higher than that. But as I say, he'll just leave at the end of the season no matter what. I cannot see him anything pointing towards him staying after that.
No, if he stayed, it would be one of
It'd be
the
a shock.
it would be one of the biggest shocks. I don't. That's reaction. I was going to say I'd put it above us winning the league, but that is a bit reactionary. No, but it would be mental.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely. After all the things it's come out with.
If I don't even know. We'll go in more into detail on who's going to replace him a little bit later on in the show. But who is your number one option to replace him?
Get me Julian Nagelsmann as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. Is that it? It's just Nagelsmann done. Get him in.
As you say, we'll go into it a little bit later, but I will say it was Enrique, and now with the whole incredibly insane situation, almost as insane as this Conte situation, the fact that Nagelsmann is available on the market, we should be going all out for him at the moment.
Yeah. I must say, the Nagelsmann was mental, and that also means that Poch will stay available.
Exactly.
Which is, again, mental, because everybody all season has been kind of going, Poch will go back to Spurs. Poch is waiting for that Spurs job. But if now Poch doesn't, a club like West Ham or even a club like Leicester is looking at their manager going, if we sack him, can we get Poch? Because Poch will now know he's not certain to get the Spurs job, even though he's probably got to go through an interview process. Granted, Levy absolutely loves him. Levy, you can tell him all. Levy absolutely loves him, and might just get him back as a yes man. But that's an interesting one there. But Nagelsmann is the number one for you, and I must say I've got to agree because he is incredible.
Exactly.
If he stays on the market until the summer, Real Madrid will be interested, as I think Liverpool might be. I know they've got Klopp, and I know they love Klopp. But Nagelsmann is the long-term successor to Klopp, I do feel. So that could be an interesting one going on there. And then I think most clubs in Italy are interested. You could see possibly Inter and Juve sacking their managers or moving on from their managers this summer. PSG as well. So there's going to be a lot of interest in him. But we'll move back to Conte and especially the Paratici-Conte partnership. Because we've sort of spoken on the issues with recruitment, the issues on signing people like Jed Spence and Dan Juma, who is how many minutes he's played in the league? Like 3 or something? Isn't it like 30 odd?
He's played almost nothing. Yeah. I think he's got in sort of FA Cup, he's got about 50, 60 minutes, if that.
Mental. That is genuinely mental. For a player that was, going to go to Everton and probably help them stay up and stuff.
He probably wishes he went to Everton now.
He probably does.
Why does he want to be here just to sit on the bench?
And a player wishing they went to Everton, something must be mentally wrong with them. So there is something going on. But I know these things are possibly down to Levy, but you also have to put them at the door to Paratici. And Paratici and Conte should have been a match made in heaven. So has there been a breakdown of the relationship between these two, or just what's gone on? Because these two should have worked really well together.
Yeah, obviously Paratici, Conte have both worked with each other a couple of times now. They're at Juve together. And I actually think that is where the problem has stemmed over the past couple of months, was their time at Juve. Obviously, with Paratici, we all know what's going on there with the sort of scandalous
Yeah.
accounting and fraud and all of that stuff. So we won't get too deep into that. But I do think that's had an effect on Conte. He's almost seen his best mate practically disappear from the club. Normally, every match day from where I'm sitting in my season ticket seat, you can see him sitting on the bench next to all the subs. He's mouthing off the players, making sure they're doing the job. But over the last couple of months, since that first hearing, he has completely vanished. He's
Okay.
not seen anywhere. Maybe the odd picture of him up in sort of the director's box, but there's no statements or anything from him really in the club. So it's all gone quiet there. And that may have had an effect on Conte because he might feel that he can't sort of get his points across. And Paratici is obviously the man that is sort of the middleman between Conte and Levy. And if he knows that Paratici has been taken out of the equation, Conte to Levy is going to be a bit of a
Yeah.
clash of egos and a clash of personalities, really. So I think that's definitely put a blocker on things as well.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that have come out of that. First of all, I want to discuss sort of the player attitude within the club
Mm.
that I can't remember what I was watching, but I was watching something the other day, and it went back to the Spurs documentary. But we'll go on to that in a second. Does Paratici leave now then? If Conte's going and with all the stuff going on, Paratici, can you see him moving on? Because if he is sort of going quiet, he should be a public figure speaking for Spurs. But he's going quiet. Surely that's not the best thing for the club.
Yeah, so I think it's in about 3 weeks' time. There is the hearing of the appeal for the bans and stuff that Paratici picked up. In that hearing, it'll either be that he's cleared of everything, or it will be that the ban will extend to all forms of football, not just Italian football.
Okay.
So I think it's going to be a case of he either is told he can stay, but then will probably leave at the end of the season along with Conte, or he'll be gone within the next sort of month, 3 weeks to a month.
Okay.
Because a manager like Pochettino, a manager like Nagelsmann is going to want control in the club. He's
Yeah.
going to want control over things he can do, and having that director of football there is going to massively clash with that responsibility.
Yeah, especially if it's not a man that they want as well, because
Exactly.
it is clear that Conte has kind of gone to the club for Paratici, and yeah, it's a
Yeah.
big mess. I did touch on it before, but I do want to touch on this player culture. I was listening to something the other day, and the Spurs documentary. Danny Rose is talking to Jose, who's the manager at the time, and
Yes.
doesn't like what he hears about the loan move, and he goes, "I'm going to go and speak to Daniel." So the manager isn't even seen as the top person in Spurs, clearly, at least under Jose, and you'd presume it's probably the same under Conte. The players seem to be a little, I don't want to say the players seem stuck up, and it could just be the Danny Rose case, but that seems quite a normal thing just to go, I'm off to go and speak to Daniel, I don't like what I've heard from you, I'm off to go and have a sit down with Daniel Levy. Is this it's a bigger issue than Conte because Spurs can't win trophies. Third in a two-horse race. But and you knew I
Had to
had
get
to.
there.
You knew I had to. But Spurs can't win trophies. There is a big thing within the club about this. So where does it come from?
Yeah, I know this is what the clip you're referring to, and the problem is with that clip, we were never really given the context of the entire situation. So when
No.
he was saying, "I'm going to speak to Levy," that could mean number one, as you mentioned, he's going to speak to him, say he's not happy, or number two, that could mean he's going to hand in a transfer request to the chairman, which would sort of make a bit more
Yeah,
sense,
possibly.
saying like, "I'm not happy here, I want to move clubs." But as I say, we're missing that context. We don't really know the full situation. But the fact, if it is the first one, and we will say that it's the first situation, the fact that the players feel like they can just approach the chairman like that is a bit odd because Levy is such a public figure in our club when he shouldn't really be. Like,
No.
how often do you hear about the chairman of Liverpool, the chairman of, I won't say Chelsea because obviously they've just got on their own and
Yep.
all of that, so that's different. But the chairman of Liverpool, the chairman of Man City, coming out and sort of doing interviews and all of this. Like, you're
They
not going to
don't.
see Haaland going to the chairman of Manchester City and saying, "Look, I'm not happy here," or something like that. It just does not happen, and it's only Spurs that it happens. So Levy really needs to focus on. Don't get me wrong, the business side of things he does exceptionally, but he gets way too involved in the football side of things. He needs to leave that down to either his director of football or his manager.
And then I guess we can finish off this section, which is tied in really nicely, which I didn't plan it to, with the final question. Is this all Levy's fault?
If we're talking about the immediate situation, I'm not sure because of the way Conte called out the club and stuff. So he has a bit of responsibility
Hmm.
there. But if we're looking at the wider picture of things, yes, it comes down to Levy, the chairman, and our owner, or ENIC, the company, and Joe Lewis, the individual. It all comes down to them. I think we've had, I saw a stat the other day, 16 managers in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
16. Do you know how nuts that
Mm.
is? And people like Redknapp and Pochettino account for sort of 40% of that time as well. So the sheer amount of managers that we've had and the failure to back them. Now, don't get me wrong, we've spent money, but our recruitment is also exceptionally poor as well. And you look at, I think there was a stat that Sky Sports put out the other day. I think it was a little bit off, but roughly speaking, Conte, I think, has signed sort of 12 players in the time that he's been here. And we spent about £190 million there or thereabouts. And people saying, oh, how can you say he's not been backed? How can you say he's not been backed? But you average that out. That's an average of about sort of 13 to 14 million pound a player. You think, is that backing a top club? Imagine
No.
Chelsea signing sort of load of 13, 14 million pound players. There'd be outrage. So I don't know why it Spurs
60 isn't
that's a
enough for
thing we
them.
accept. Yeah,
60 isn't enough
exactly.
for Chelsea, so yeah.
They splash money like it's nothing. So
No, yeah.
yeah, so to come back to the main question, I think in the wider picture, yeah, it comes down to the ownership, the failure to back and recruit at a high level is where sort of the failure lies.
Well, there we go. I'd love to say we've managed to fix Spurs, but I think that's only the start of the issues. I think fixing Spurs will take absolute years. But yeah, that's what's going on at Spurs. And with Conte, we'll take a short break here before we come back to grade every Spurs manager since Harry Redknapp. We are back from I'd say short break, but it wasn't. Lots of discussions about lots of things I won't repeat on the pod. Right. We'll come back and grade some Spurs managers. Now, we've gone back to the Harry Redknapp days, and we're going to grade every Spurs manager from A to F since Harry Redknapp, which was in 2008. He's the first one on the list, so we might as well start with him. Harry Redknapp, how are you going to grade him?
Yeah, so if we're sort of doing a comparison between the managers that we have on the list, I probably would give him an A or a B. I might actually give him an A, to be honest, because
Okay.
the football we played under him and what we did under him with Champions League and stuff like that, he was sort of pretty much the first one to do it. So I probably would give him that A, just because the times under him, it was a positive time, it was a good time. He's a great manager for us.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it's a hard one for me to speak about because when he was appointed, I would have been 3. So I can't really sit here and provide you with in-depth tactical analysis.
I wouldn't have been too much older, to be honest.
No. So we'll probably move on from Redknapp quite quickly because neither of us can really speak about him. We will move on to a man that I do semi-remember. This would have been, 2012 he was appointed. What happened in 2013, the Watford game happened. Great. Andre Villas-Boas, how are we going to grade him? I'm expecting this to be quite low.
Yeah, so probably for him a D or an E.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was the start of our Chelsea sort of retirement home for previous managers, Villas-Boas. So again, didn't really do too much. He was there for I think sort of a year and a half in the end, maybe a little bit less. Only had about 80 games for us really. He had an all right sort of points per game, but didn't do too much, to be honest,
No.
apart from that. So probably I go a D for him.
A D. I think that's probably fair enough from what I can remember. He wasn't excellent, but you've had some worse managers.
Exactly.
Next up, Sherwood. How are we thinking about this one? Because again, from what I can remember, he didn't light the world on fire.
Yeah, the thing is with Sherwood, as a manager, he wasn't awful. I think definitely in our history we've had worse. But the problem is with him, he's just been so critical of the club after he left. He seemed so salty that he left and we got rid of him because he only actually had about 26 games, I think it was, in charge in the end. So again, he was only there for 6 months. He hates the club for some reason. I think it was Pedro Porro. He played against you actually. It was his debut against you.
Yes.
And he did get skinned. To be fair, he did get skinned.
He was awful.
But Sherwood was talking about like he was the biggest flop in the world. You think he's played one game?
That's harsh.
He's played 70 minutes. That's so hard. And Porro even said, I think recently, shut up, basically. So
I saw that.
I think for his time at the club, it wasn't too bad, but his criticisms of the club and all of that after, I think, have been somewhat a bit biased and a bit unfair. So I'm going to give him an E.
An E. I think that's fair enough. That Porro thing. Looking back, it was. The gist of what he was saying was fair because he was absolutely awful within the game.
Agreed.
I think I messaged, I'm going to see if I can find out message you after the game, but I said something along the line of, God, Porro was absolutely awful today.
I think even in my player ratings, I gave him a bit of a low one.
Probably. Let me have a look. I said, because I went, morning, mate, hope you enjoyed yesterday. And I went, you were properly poor, though. Porro and Tanganga were both awful. Barnes ran you ragged. Which he did, which was the last time Harvey Barnes was found in a Leicester shirt.
You're missing since.
Yeah, he has. If anyone can find him, just drop me a bit. It'd be really nice to have a left winger back. But yeah, he was awful in that game. Granted, Sherwood was very harsh on him. So yeah, I think he is pretty fair enough. And then we move on to the shining light, the man that took to a Champions League final, the man who that's all it takes really to be a good Spurs manager. Poch. You know what else he did for you?
What's that?
Do you know what else Poch did for you? So
you mentioned this 2-horse race. I already know.
So you're in a Premier League title race, yeah. It was between two clubs.
Oh, was it? No,
yeah, they're called Leicester City and Tottenham Hotspur. Do you know where Tottenham finished?
So, Pochettino, yeah?
Yes, Poch.
So, Pochettino, I think it'd be criminal to give him anything else but an A.
Yeah.
He deserves it. I mean, where he took the club with the way we were, with our spending. Again, you went 18 months, 3 straight transfer windows without signing a single player, which itself should be a criminal offence to even deal with something like that. So yeah, anything but an A. It would be awful. So yeah, straight in that A category.
Even an A star would you give him, or was he not quite there because he didn't win a trophy?
Yeah, I probably would. I would give him an A star. Just although he didn't win a trophy, of course we would have loved it. Where he took us and how I remember the fans during the whole Pochettino period. It was like the club was just magic. We all loved it. So yeah, I probably would give him an A star.
Fair enough. You sacked him and you went out and replaced him with a man we've already touched on in the podcast, a man who had a whole documentary based around him, a man who is called the Special One but didn't do very special things at Tottenham apart from lead them to a final which he didn't even manage. Jose Mourinho.
Yeah, the problem, I'll sort of give a little bit of context. The problem with Tottenham is that we do not do win now managers. You look at Pochettino, you look at Redknapp, they were there for a number of years. Someone like Jose and even Conte, they are win now managers. They bring in the players, they will win you something. Look at what he did with United. He won a trophy within the first sort of 2 years, didn't he? So that's what they do. But it's just such a clash with what happens with Tottenham and Jose, because you could see, I think I even said when he was appointed, it was less than 24 hours after we'd sacked Poch as well, so he was clearly lined up. It was just never going to work. I don't understand why we thought it was going to work. But saying that, and you mentioned it as well, he did get us to that Carabao Cup final. And now, again, I keep saying it, but to sack a manager like Jose Mourinho, literally nicknamed the Special One, the serial winner, to sack him 6 days before a cup final is absolutely abysmal. I do not understand that decision. While I agree he probably should have gone at the end of that season, sacking a manager like him that is known for winning trophies, one of the most decorated managers. He won a Champions League with Porto, for God's sake. You think you could wait 6 days to let him take this Carabao Cup final? And you never know. He's that manager that wins trophies. He's a manager that wins those final games. So it could have been a different game. I'm going to give him a C because the sole fact that it could have been a D, but I just feel that he was so unfairly treated with the way that Carabao Cup final went and the fact that he was sacked 6 days before it. I think a C is fair because we didn't do anything special under him, but it could have been special. We just don't know.
It's a strange one, and the follow-up question I did actually have was, would you have kept him? Which obviously, you said there you would have done. It's one of them with Jose where you were in bad form at the time. I agree you should have kept him, but you were in bad form at the time. So was there possibly a thought from Leeds where it's, do we roll the dice now, try something else, and see if we could get a new manager bounce for a cup final, which never really happens. But you were on a poor run of form, if I seem to remember. You know, you were doing quite badly, so it's a poor
Yeah,
decision from Levy.
we got knocked out. I think it was to Zagreb in the I can't remember what it was. What at the time it was probably the Conference League actually. We got knocked out to Zagreb when their manager was in prison somewhere. So again, it doesn't look great, but I come back to it. He's a serial winner. You can't sack a manager 6 days before a final to the guy known for winning trophies. But the sort of gist that I understood and people understood, we think that there was some clause in Jose's contract that said if you win a trophy with Tottenham, you get some big payout, 10
Yeah.
million payout or something like that. And we all think it's just come down to that. Levy's seen that £10 million is 10 million is a complete rough estimate. We don't know what the amount was, but say £10 million is on the line, and he's thought, oh, we can't afford that. Well, we can, but he doesn't want to pay it. So let's just get rid of him. It would be cheaper. And you think if that is the mentality of the club, profit over glory, money over glory, it's shambolic. So yeah, going back to his ranking, yeah, I think a C is fair because he just was not given that chance at the end, right at the end.
Yeah, I think that's 100% fair enough. We'll move from him on to the man who replaced him up until the end of that season. It's Ryan Mason.
Sort of link in there with the Carabao Cup final. I think there was a screenshot that still makes me laugh to this day where they compared Pep Guardiola to Ryan Mason. You think this is really what this club has come to.
Ryan Mason played one game.
Yeah, yeah, and it was like Pep's got 30 odd trophies or something like that, and he's played hundreds and hundreds of games, and Ryan Mason's had like one or two. But yeah, to be fair to him, he won. I think it was 4 out of 6 Premier League games. I might need to double check that, but 4 out of 6 Premier League games. So he sort of kept us where we were. Again, he didn't really have enough time to show what he could do.
No.
My only problem with him, and he was given the nickname Ryan Mate Son because he just played all of his mates, people like Harry Winks, people like Dyer, even when they're in shocking form, as Dyer is now, to be honest. But I would actually give him a B, as weird as it sounds, because at the end of the day, he was, I think, 29, 30 maybe, and he did step up. He won us those 4 out of 6 Premier League games to keep us in the sort of that top half battle at the top of the league. So I would give him a B because, again, he didn't have too much time either, so it'd be unfair to give him any lower, really.
So according to Football.London, Ryan Mason won 4 of his 6 Premier League games in charge.
Yeah.
So that's one of your stats correct. However, I have checked the Jose Mourinho one. He would have been knocked out of the Europa League because the Conference League wasn't formed until last season.
There we go then. Yeah, I knew we lost to someone and their manager was sitting in a prison cell somewhere. So either way, it's not great.
And I can tell you how I know the Conference League was formed last season because we were in the semi-finals of the first ever Conference League. Look how far we've fallen. Speaking of how far people have fallen, we can speak about a hairline, how far that's fallen here, and we're talking about Nuno Espirito Santo. We can still look for the hairline. It's not going to appear. The blokes had to go to Saudi Arabia and then left that because he got bored, probably, because who doesn't? This was awful.
Yeah, what makes me still laugh is that he still went to Saudi and won a trophy. Of course he did. I know it's not the most competitive league, but he still did it, to be fair to him. But yeah, the whole appointment and the whole situation around Nuno was an absolute travesty. It was never should have happened. We were so close to appointing other managers, and Conte even was sort of spoke about then, although he had just left Inter, so it wasn't 100% sure on him. But we had Paratici, and you think, okay, maybe Paratici's got that pull, and he's sort of rubbing up his best mate, saying, "Come on, mate, let's do this together," kind of thing, is what we all sort of hoped. But I don't understand why Nuno came. It was just the most bizarre appointment in the world. He left Wolves and he did well there, but that was Wolves. You think he's now coming to a big club, would he be able to manage? I think he did 5 wins, 5 losses in the end, so 50% win rate. And we did beat City, to be fair. But it was just never ever going to work. He never had the fans full backing as much as any manager that comes in, and that goes for now as well. I'll give them my 100% backing. I'll say from the very start, right, let's see what you can do. But it just was not pretty at all, and then some of the results towards the ends were really poor. So probably an E or an F for him. I'm gonna go F be solely because of the fact it was never going to work.
Uh-huh.
It was just written in the stars. He's a nice guy, don't get me wrong, but the "we are proud" or "we'll make you proud" comment will live in my head rent free forever, I think.
It's such a strange one. This was the bloke that was let go of Wolves because he wasn't performing. Spurs went for every other manager under the sun. I seem to remember, it was a running thing all summer. Spurs were rejected by 7, 8 managers now. You ended up with Nuno, and it was just never going to work. Nuno is not a good manager. Even, Everton now aren't picking Nuno. None of these sides now in, relegation battles going, oh yeah, we'll have you. Because he's not a good manager. He's average at best.
When I saw the notification come through my phone, because again, sort of, obviously I'm in the know with a lot of Spurs news things and sort of can predict things before it's all made official and all that. But there was no sort of indicate. There was like a bit, oh, we might go for Nuno. And you think, yeah, all right, good one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got the notification through, and you see all the pictures of him holding up the shirt in his first interview, and I sort of went down to my dad and I was like, look, we've signed Nuno, and he looked at me like, yeah, all right, yeah, good one. And you think, oh my God, we've actually signed this guy. It just from minute one, it was like, okay, is this really the direction we're going to take?
The funny thing is, I had the exact same reaction when when we appointed Ranieri. I went, "What have we done this for? This is stupid. This isn't going to work." Well, one of us was right. One of us was right when we said it wasn't going to work. No, I wasn't. Conte, last but not least, we'll rank the manager who's still in now, just about. Yeah, but he hasn't been sacked as of recording. We presume he will have been by the time this goes out on Wednesday. Yeah, probably. How do you rate his time at the club on the presumption that he doesn't go and win every game between now and the end of the season, which he won't?
Which is, it's written in the stars. My luck, it probably will.
Imagine.
To be honest, I'm a big fan of Conte. I'm probably one of the only ones that still likes him, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I'd give him probably a B because I've given Jose a C, and he sort of took us to the Europa League and all of that. But Conte, to be fair to him, he took us to the Champions League. He got us top 4 last season. He did what Pochettino did. What Jose failed to do. Nuno didn't even get a chance. Did what Redknapp did, took us to the Champions League. So I think Conte would be. We for some reason seem to have become City's bogey team under him as well. We seem to beat them for some reason. Although he wasn't there, we beat Chelsea for the first time in a long time. Beat West Ham. All 3 of them on the bounce as well. So I would give him a B. Maybe his football is not the most attractive to watch, but it does sometimes get us results. Does that mean I want him to stay? Not sure. But if we're looking at where he's got us and where we're sitting now, sort of around 3rd or 4th, I think he deserves a B, to be fair to him.
Fair enough. Well, there we go. The man who was publicly slated Spurs gets a B. On that, we will end this segment here before we come back to rank who could replace Conte. So let's do that. We are back from the short break to come back and rank all future Tottenham managers. Now you can see on your screen now, but we have 5 tiers to rank these managers into. We have 10 managers, as well as a couple more that I've got on my phone that aren't on the tier list that we'll quickly rank right at the end. The tiers we have are: get him in, yes please, not the worst appointment, so extremely mid, and I'd prefer Nuno back. Considering what we said about Nuno today, yeah, I think that's probably fair enough. I was sitting there thinking if I could come up with any good references for any of these, any good Spurs references. I was thinking about I'm just not going to make another reference to that season when we won the Premier League because you'll never believe in the thing. I didn't think about it there. I thought you're just not going to want to put anyone in the tier because you're not going to want to say it yourself. So yes, we will we will move on from there. And we will come to the tier list. Now, which manager should we go for first? Let's start with Thomas Frank, obviously in charge at Brentford at the moment, doing a really, really good job. Where would you put him out of these 5 tiers?
Yeah, so I'll probably put him smack bang in the middle, to be honest. Not the worst appointment. Look, he's a good manager, you just mentioned, don't get me wrong. What he's doing with Brentford is great, but obviously he's not proven at a bigger club. Look at Nuno, he did really well with Wolves right until the end. Comes to a big club and then he fails completely. So
Yeah.
I'm worried it would be maybe a similar thing with him. So yeah, I think sticking him in that middle tier would probably be quite fair.
All right, fair enough. He's one that I kind of said the same thing with Potter. I feel like he needs a middling move before he goes up to the next level. I know that's harsh on Brentford, but go to a West Ham. Go to, I know you might see it as a little bit below him possibly.
But a bigger infrastructure.
But come to Leicester, please. Please. A club like that, maybe.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
An Aston Villa, I know they've got Emma in, so it's probably not going to happen. But a club who's bigger in size, so that you can sort of test yourself before you go to the highest level. So into not the worst appointment, that is fair enough. Next up, let's go for Ruben Amorim, the current Sporting manager.
Yeah. I'd also, again, put him probably in not the worst appointment, solely for the fact he's a young and upcoming coach, which for Tottenham is something that we always seem to look at. A guy that can possibly do a rebuild rather than a win now type of guy like Conte and Jose. My slight issue with him would maybe be because it is in the Portuguese league. Obviously, you've got the top teams of Porto, Benfica, Sporting, that are always going to be in that top half. And if you're not, then you're clearly doing something big wrong. So I think in that not the worst appointment is probably quite fair because, again, we just don't really know what he can do at a top club, especially in the Premier League as well.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair enough. You know, he is currently fourth in the Portuguese league, which isn't excellent, and he's quite a long way behind the pack as well. He's 8 points off second place, 18 points off first place in Benfica. Yeah. But obviously he has been doing well in Europe, so not the worst appointment. Fair enough. I think he's a good manager. I do think he's a good manager, but
I do agree. I think he's one more for the future though. Maybe 5-10 years, you'd see what he can actually do.
Again, he needs to go somewhere that isn't the Portuguese league.
Would you take him at Leicester? I know I'm going to book on the interviewer now.
Absolutely, mate. I'm taking anyone. I'm taking Roy from down the chippy at this point.
Roy Hodgson.
Sure, you know what? Sure. Why not? Genuinely, he's a good manager. I do think he'd probably go to somebody a little bit above us. I know Atleti aren't really the kind of club he possibly would go to because of the style of manager that Diego Simeone is, but that level of club, go to somebody who's a little bit smaller before trying to. That's kind of
similar to Frank
Atleti, but go to maybe somewhere in Italy. Could he get a job at an Inter? Somewhere like that possibly before you would. And I know saying Inter are below the Premier League is possibly a little bit unfair, or below the top 6 of the Premier League is possibly a little bit unfair, but I think it possibly is justified looking at the pool the Premier League does have nowadays.
Yeah.
So I think Amorim would need a move before a club like this, but yeah, good manager nonetheless. Let's go for Enrique now, a known winner. How would you rate him?
So Enrique was definitely my number one personal target before obviously the situation over the last couple of days. I put him in yes please for now, so the second tier. Just because, as you say, he's a good manager. I think he would be able to commit to this sort of rebuild as well. He plays decent football. We saw what he did with Barca and stuff like that. So yeah, I think putting him in that yes please, he is a big name as well. So he would have possibly that pulling power if we were trying to get a couple of big players. So yeah, I think that's the right tier for him.
Does the fact that he is a known winner, does that scare you?
A little bit, because we're almost jinxing ourselves with what we had with Jose, what we had with Conte. It does, but again, I hope he would be coming in to commit to more of a rebuild rather than splashing all the cash and winning something within the next year as much as I want it.
Yeah, and also that's not going to happen because you're Spurs. Just keep getting him in there. Any Spurs fan listening to this at this point has gone, I'm fed up of the interview. I've clicked off. I'm done. But we're gonna keep moving on, and we'll move on to Stevie Cooper. I pass the City ground every day on the way into college, and I look at it and go, can we win there once in a while? Stevie Cooper. You might lose some of your female fan base if you were to appoint him. I'm not saying he's ugly, but What do we think of Stevie Cooper?
Um, Look, what he's doing with Forest at home, he's great. Away
Oh
form
wait,
is
he's awful.
nothing short of shocking. So I think he'd go in the extremely mid tier
Uh
because
huh.
he's exactly that. He's an extremely mid manager. We were linked with him a couple of weeks ago. A couple of reports coming out about us possibly considering him as a target, and the whole fan base are a bit like, really?
Yeah.
A bit the same with Frank, although I think Frank's a little bit better. With Nuno, you just think, why are we going for this guy?
Mm.
He's doing okay with Forest, as I say, in terms of home form. Although he has signed about 30 players or something
Yeah.
stupid like that. But as I say, he's just an extremely mid manager, probably similar to Frank and Amorim as well. He needs to go to a bit of a bigger club like the Aston Villas, maybe somewhere in France, somewhere in Spain, just to prove that he can actually manage a bigger club before taking sort of that massive jump up to one of the big clubs.
He's one I could definitely see going to possibly a West Ham or somewhere
Mm.
like that. Get a move like
Possibly
that,
if Moyes goes.
and then see if you can do it at that level. I don't think you'd jump ship mid-season, but if they were to sort of let
No,
Moyes go
I
at the end of
agree.
the season,
Yeah.
I think that possible move could work out. I do also think he does enjoy the Forest project,
Yeah, yeah,
but yeah, just
yeah. I mean, he
a
got him there, didn't he? So
he did.
he probably
I,
probably
I
wants to
probably
be
should have
there
put
for
a
now.
trigger warning out there though before talking about him. If you just yeah, I
No
don't feel
problem.
like there's a good end to that sentence, so I'm just going to stop it there. Uh, yeah, we'll move on because I don't want to get cancelled for saying bad things about Cooper and the way he looks. Let's move on to a fan favourite. We've already discussed him in the podcast. It's Maurizio Pochettino.
I'd put him in probably the yes, please, solely for the fact of what he did. Now, I am probably in the minority here where I don't really want Poch back. Now, look, what he did for our club was amazing, and I appreciate what he did for us. But because of look, he was sacked for a reason at the end of the day. I know I
Uh-huh.
said previously he shouldn't have been sacked, and I still agree with that. But he was sacked for a reason in the poor form. And the thing I worry most about Poch is it's not his football or anything like that. Is does Daniel Levy go back to his old ways of not spending any money or spending pennies compared to what other clubs are spending? Does Poch again just become the yes man and sort of does whatever he's told kind of thing by Levy? He doesn't demand sort of players and stuff as Conte or Jose would. So the only thing I worry is we are taking a step back essentially sort of for 4 or 5 years almost and admitting that there is that big mistake, and I don't know whether the board will admit that they did make that mistake by stacking Poch in the first place. So put him in, yes, please. I think is fair because look, if he probably would be in my top three to take back, but we just need assurances that things would change and he would actually have the backing that Conte had, that Jose had, even
Mm,
Nuno because he signed a couple of decent players as well.
yeah.
So yeah, we just need to make sure that he gets that availability.
Would you be scared that if he did? I know you've kind of touched on it there. Would you be scared that if he did come back, then it would be the case of before, where the club just don't invest in players anymore? Or was that a circumstantial thing where you were building a new stadium and you needed to put the money into that rather than into the playing staff?
I would be worried. Yeah, I would. I think it comes down to because the football that Poch played, and we were winning a lot of games, and we got to the Champions League final. I think Levy saw it as, oh, if I just let this guy do his thing, I don't need to spend any money. And the board probably sort of agreed with him there.
Oh,
So you think, why would we spend money if we're doing it all anyway? Getting to Champions League finals, sort of hitting Champions League football getting top four every single season. So I do worry that it's just going to slip back into that idea that Poch will probably get us there anyway. So why do we need to bother to spend 50, 60 million, 70 million pounds on a top player if he's just going to do it anyway without them, just taking the sort of a little bit longer and a bit harder to get there.
fair enough. Well, there we go. Poch wanted back, but not the first option, so I'm interested to see who that will be. Let's go for possibly another man that does need a bigger move before he were to move to a club like Spurs. Roberto De Zerbi, another London big club nicking a manager from Brighton this season.
Yeah, he falls into sort of the bracket of the Frank and the Amarim and the Cooper. We've sort of discussed it already.
Uh-huh.
That he needs, I think, a bit more time to prove himself because look, he's come in and he's doing wonders with Brighton. Don't get me wrong, where they are in the league, he's doing well. But again, does that automatically mean that 10 months after he signed for Brighton that he's ready to take up the big clubs in the world, really? Again, you have to consider the fact that he's probably signed a decent deal with Brighton, maybe 3-4 years. So there is going to be a big fee there to pay as well,
Yeah.
which, again, I'm not sure whether we would pay when you see all the free managers on the market at the moment, your Poch, your Enrique, your Nagelsmann's managers like that. So I put him in not the worst appointment because at the end of the day, he's doing well with Brighton. But I just think he needs to prove himself possibly that little bit more. Maybe, again, if he does what he does with Brighton over the next 2-3 seasons, then I consider him definitely, but not the worst appointment for now.
Okay, fair enough. There we go. De Zerbi into not the worst appointment. And now we're left with 4 very polar opposite managers. We've got Schroeder, we've got Sampaoli. Sampaoli is the manager of Napoli, isn't he? Yeah. Nagelsmann and Tite. We'll start with Tite, the former Brazilian manager. Where would you put him?
I'd probably put him in extremely mid.
Okay.
Solely for the fact that, look, if you're not playing well with Brazil's national team, then you're definitely doing something wrong. I think I could get something out of the Brazil national team with the
Probably.
players they have. Your Neymar, your Vinicius Junior, your Richarlison, of course. Again, he hasn't. I'm looking through his previous manager history here. There's no big clubs. Well, okay, I don't want to offend anyone here, but there's no European clubs that he's done well at or he's actually managed at all. So for him to come in straight to a Big Six Premier League side, I think would be a huge jump for him. Even going through the clubs that he has played at, his points per game ratios aren't incredible.
No.
So again, he's a little bit older. Would he be one of those managers that would be willing to go for rebuild? I'm not sure. I think he's in his 60s already. So is he willing to sacrifice the next sort of 4 or 5 years of his life dedicated to rebuilding Spurs? As you say, probably not. So I think extremely mid. I wouldn't really be too interested if we got him.
Fair enough. I did realise I said Sampaoli before, I meant Spalletti. Let me off a mill. We've touched on Spalletti there, the manager of Napoli. Another man who's in his 60s, 64, but been doing an incredible job with Napoli this season. Now, this isn't me saying he would move. For the record, I don't think he would leave this Napoli side because I think he would be stupid if he did, to be honest. But where would you put him?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. There's almost zero chance that he leaves Napoli, especially now with him being so close to winning the Serie A, to be fair to him. But say hypothetically it came to the end of the season and we were still looking for a manager, then I'd probably put him in the second tier, the yes please. Look, what he's doing with Napoli is great. He's having a really good season. Obviously, Osimhen's playing really well. That Georgian winger that I'm not even going to begin to pronounce. Yeah, I'm not even going to begin to pronounce his surname. Obviously, they're balling out, so fair play to them. Again, he's doing really well for Napoli. He's not going to leave them at the moment, but I would still take him solely for the fact that he does seem like a decent manager. But then it comes down similar to Tite, because he is older, even older than Tite. Is he willing to sacrifice that 3-4 years of his life to him almost being 70 to help rebuild Spurs? I'm not sure, but solely for his managing and what he's doing with Napoli, I put him in yes, please.
Yeah, and I will actually offer you something. If he were to bring everybody's favourite Georgian winger, the only one anyone's ever heard of, Kavica Kvaratskhelia, if he were to bring him with him to Spurs, would that make him the first option? Would that put him in front of whoever that first option is? Because obviously, I know you've got Son out there, but he hasn't particularly been performing this season. Obviously, Kvaratskhelia is an excellent player, and possibly, I know Napoli are wanting about 180 million this summer, which is mental. So I'm not particularly saying that it's realistic. Well, it's not realistic. Levy's not going to spend that much in one window, never mind on one player. But if he were to bring him with you, if he were to bring him with him, not with you, you're not the new Spurs manager, would that make him your first choice?
No.
Wow.
And now, don't get me wrong, he's a great player, great player, but I don't know if we can rely so much on one player. Now, Kane, for example, we rely on him a hell of a lot, and he is a great player because he does everything. He does playmaking, he does the scoring, he does defending even at times. But same with any player that comes in, there is no guarantee that they will work in the Premier League. Now, do I think he will work in the Premier League? Yes.
Yeah.
He probably will, but I'm not sure whether he'd go just because he's bringing in that one player. I'm not sure whether he'd go to number one in my list. He would go second, though. He would go second.
Yeah, I think Cavaradonna is just incredible. And he's one of those players as well that, you know, that it's super off topic. One of those players that you've watched for ages and you'd be like, he's going to have a big move. And then he does and it works out and you're like, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
One person whose big move for him possibly didn't work out, he moved to Ajax in the summer. And it didn't particularly go very well for him, did it? Schroeder, what do we make of this one?
Yeah, I prefer Nuno back straight in there. I think although it's become a lot more competitive recently, I think you'd agree with sort of the likes of PSV, final teams like that, with them becoming a little bit better. It has heated up a bit more. But if you're not winning things with Ajax, if you're not playing well with Ajax in the Eredivisie, you're obviously doing something very, very, very wrong. I think he had a good start with them, but then it sort of really tailed off,
them
and
like
then
fourth in the table.
Yeah, he started falling out with the board, the players, a bit like Conte, to be fair. But I genuinely would prefer Nuno back over him. I just don't think he's the right manager for us in any way, shape, or form, really.
Well, last time you must have went through about 7 or 8 options before you got to Nuno. This time, if you get through 9 options, there we go. Nuno, you've got the job back. Well done. Try not to make every Spurs fan hate you this time. And then, last but not least, there's one manager left, and there's a one tier with absolutely nobody in it. So I can almost guarantee where this guy's going to go. He's been recently sacked by Bayern Munich, with them deciding to bring Thomas Tuchel in, and it's Julian Nagelsmann.
I knew you'd leave him to the end for this exact reason.
Watch time.
Exactly. Nagelsmann, yeah, he's only going in that top tier. Get him in. I struggle to see why we would not go full out for this man, because look, he's a great manager. I think he was at Hoffenheim, then Leipzig, and then obviously he got his big move to Bayern. Fun fact: we were interested in him when we originally sacked Poch. In 2019, I think it was. But I think then, again, we would have had to have paid Leipzig off, and I don't think Levy was prepared to do that with Jose sort of there and waiting. And then when we sacked Jose as well, he was probably our number one option. Then obviously he ended up going to Bayern. And as a young German manager, you're going to take the opportunity, aren't you, to manage the biggest sort of German club in history. So fair play. You're always going to take the Bayern job over the Spurs job. But I think the way he's been treated with Bayern over the last few days is nothing short of awful. He's even been sort of spoken about that he was a Spurs fan when he was younger. So you think, why would we not take this guy? I think we should be doing everything possible to get him in. He's a top manager. He is that definition of a rebuild manager. He's the perfect fit in every way. He plays good football. He's adaptive with his tactics and stuff like that. So just get him in, please.
Yeah, fair enough. He works. Being a Spurs fan as a child, Nagelsmann, I'm sorry, I'll pay for your therapy, please, anything. I'm sorry, mate. We will go through a couple more that I don't want to say I forgot to put on the tier list, but I didn't feel like were, I don't want to say credible, but a couple of lower options. Before we do get into the lower options, though, I want to go for the man who has obviously gone on to replace Nagelsmann, who was apparently supposed to be coming to London for talks with Spurs this week. Tuchel, where would he go on this list if he was still available?
Yeah, so correct. He was due in London on Tuesday for talks with us. I I think Bayern essentially saw that we were going for it. It may even be a tactic from Daniel Levy, and fair fucking play if that is. He's sort of made it look like we're going after Tuchel, and then they've sacked Nagelsmann because they wanted Tuchel and all that jazz. As for having him as the manager, I'm debating whether putting him in not the worst or yes please, solely for the fact is the football that Tottenham have always been known for is that sort of attacking, free-flowing, high-pressing football, and that is not Tuchel ball whatsoever. Tuchel is pretty much Conte just reincarnated. So
Yeah.
I'd probably put him in that for not the worst appointment. Because don't get me wrong, he's a great manager, but he's no different to Conte. It's another ex-Chelsea manager, which I'm getting sick of at this point. So probably, not the worst appointment. I think there are a lot of Spurs fans, I get the gist, just sort of speaking to the fans, that are actually quite happy that Bayern snapped him up when they did, because I'm not sure whether he would have had the full backing of all of the fans.
No. And then, before we go through three quick fire ones that I imagine are all going to be quite near the end of this tier list. Where does Conte go? Where does keeping Conte actually land on this tier list?
As I mentioned earlier in the pod, I am probably one of the only people that want Conte for now to stay, just because he's speaking the truth. And I think deep down he's a good manager. We've just caught him at such a wrong time in his life. Personally, obviously he's had friends, 3-4 friends pass away. He had major surgery himself, so I think we've just caught him at literally the worst time we possibly could. He's living in a hotel with his family out in Italy, so he's obviously being torn apart by that. I would like to keep him, so I put him in yes please. But I do think because of his comments, the players are really starting to turn on him, and especially the fans. The fans are not happy. I know a lot of my family that are Tottenham fans sort of want him gone as quick as possible. So yes please for me, but I know a lot of people will disagree with that.
Fair enough. And then we'll go through three fairly quick fire ones, who again possibly aren't ones for the here and now, but possibly could be ones to look towards the future. Will Still.
This guy is a running meme on Twitter, I swear.
Yes.
All I see is every week Ren's paid 22 grand or whatever.
And he's lost the game now, so they can't keep saying he's unbeaten in League One.
Thank God, because that's all I used to see in my feed. Would I prefer Nuno back over him? Not sure. I'd probably put him in extremely mid, because while he's doing well with Rennes, I think he's so unbelievably unproven. So I think anything... I'd probably prefer him to Nuno in this case, but he's not any higher than extremely mid.
No, fair enough. And another unproven manager, to say the least, Vincent Kompany.
Weirdly, I quite like Vincent Kompany. I think there was a video of one of his half-time or full-time team talks that was out on Twitter a couple of days ago, and he actually seemed like he knew what he was talking about, and he was confident with the speech that he was making. Like, anyone under Pep is obviously playing well. Arteta, Kompany, they're playing good football. I probably, surprisingly, would put him in not the worst appointment, because if he again is committed to that rebuild, then maybe, but again, similar to Frank, De Zerbi, Amorim, that are all in this category, does he have enough credit to be able to get that big jump to a top team? Because obviously if Burnley came into the Premier League, we don't really know where they'd be playing. Sort of top, bottom, middle of the table. He might need that jump up to a mid-level club like the Aston Villas, like the West Hams, just to prove himself before getting that big move. Again, it's sort of written in the stars. He'll eventually probably go to City after Pep retires or whatever. But I put him in not the worst appointment, because I actually would prefer him to a couple of the other options.
Fair enough. And then last but not least, I wasn't actually going to even talk about this guy, because I thought that kind of his chances at top jobs had gone. But then I saw his name mentioned a bit, and I thought I might as well throw him in this little quickfire section. Marco Silva.
Yeah.
Doing a good job at Fulham.
Yeah.
But he did fail at Everton.
Yeah, he's doing a good job at Fulham. I think they're in the top half of the table, correct me if I'm wrong.
I think they are.
Yeah, so he's clearly doing all right. Obviously got sent off the other day.
Yes.
Showing his passion though, so
For sure.
we like to see that. But yeah, as you say, he did fail at Everton, but let's be honest, who's not failing at Everton at this point? I think it's hard to say. I'd probably, again, put him in not the worst appointment. I
Okay.
know I'm sitting on the fence with nearly all of these, but um, again, he's not any. I'd say he's much better than someone like Steve Cooper and Tite that sort of not proven enough, as Tite especially, with the club level management. But is he better than Poch and Enrique and managers like that? Probably not. So yeah, in that middle tier is where he belongs for me.
Perfect. Right. Well, there we go. There are all the potential new Spurs managers ranked. I hope you have enjoyed the video. If you have, click the like button, subscribe, and comment and all that. And I'll catch you again in the next video. And if you're listening to the podcast, and that has actually come to the end of the podcast, I hope you have enjoyed it. It's been an absolute pleasure to have the Spurs news on, as always. For those that don't know, where can they find you?
Yeah, so on Instagram, Spurs underscore news, heading up to 18k followers now, so
Indeed.
growing really well. So yeah, come drop me a follow if you need anything Spurs related.
Indeed, 17.6k followers. So absolutely incredible there. Thank you for coming on as always, mate. Absolute pleasure. Thank you for coping with me being ill. And to the listeners at home, thank you for listening to this one. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, smash the like button, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, go and follow the Instagram and the TikTok. Danny Talks Football on both. And I will catch you all again in the next one. See ya.